Hey everybody, I'm Gil Smart, Executive Director with VoteWater, here today with a one-on-one conversation with Lindsay Cross. She's the Democratic candidate for the Florida House District 60 seat and one of 11 candidates that VoteWater endorsed this cycle in our voter guides, which are available now on our website, votewater.org/voter-guides. We have a rundown of candidates at the county, state, and federal level in 15 key Florida counties. Check it out to help you pick some clean water candidates this time around. Welcome, Lindsay. Glad you can be here.
Thank you so much, Gil. I appreciate the endorsement and glad to be with water lovers virtually all over the state.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the things that we really like about you, that we really like about Lindsay as a candidate is, and I keep saying this, but she really is a bona fide environmentalist, and Lord knows we got too few of those in the state legislature. So tell us a little bit about your background, Lindsay, and then tell us how you decided that you were going to run for office.
Absolutely. So thank you, Gil. Yes, I am an environmental scientist and have been working in Florida for over 2 decades now. Got my master's in environmental science and policy from the University of South Florida in Tampa, and have been passionate about our planet and particularly our water since I was a dorky middle schooler. Both of my parents were public school teachers. And my mom was a gifted and talented teacher, and she was doing a unit on Earth Day with her students and taught my younger brother and I about the importance of it. And something just clicked with me. I knew that I loved being outside, spending time in nature. And I realized that there was a career pathway in protecting the environment and have been, pretty laser focused on that since that time in middle school when I either had the big glasses or the big perm. Luckily, those did not overlap, but they came closely one after the other.
Yes.
Yeah. We actually just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act yesterday. So happy anniversary. So I took lots of science classes in high school and college. And when I moved down to Florida, I had family members in this area, and our family would vacation on Clearwater Beach. I loved this environment and being in the water, and was fortunate to get a job. Well, first of all, at a scuba store where I became a dive master and began to explore, the underwater ecosystems here in Florida. But then got a job at the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. And the Estuary Program is one of the most effective partnership organizations in the entire nation. And it's actually an international success story of taking a highly polluted water body, Tampa Bay, that was actually a poster child for pollution back in the 70s, actually was on 60 Minutes as a poster child for pollution. And through hard work, through proactive legislation and a lot of partnerships, been able to bring Tampa Bay back so that the water quality back in 2018, around that time, was better than it was in the 1950s when we had only 1/6 of the population here.
Wow.
So that is a success story.
Right.
And I was fortunate to work in a collaborative environment where all levels of government were working side by side with business and industry, with agriculture, the fertilizer industry, anyone who had a role to play in either keeping our water clean or making it dirty. Everyone got to the table and recognized that Tampa Bay was a shared resource and that we all had to work together to clean it up. And today we know that 20% of the jobs in the Tampa Bay region are reliant on having a clean and healthy Tampa Bay. And that's a success story that we can all be proud of, and that really serves as the backbone for our economy here.
And a success story that can theoretically be replicated elsewhere. I mean, it does sort of show how, with the right legislation and the right commitment, dedication to the cause, you can achieve restoration.
That is right. That is right. Yeah. And so the short answer to why I'm running is because I saw a lack of leadership on water and environmental expertise in Tallahassee. And You see that there's a need, you look around and you think people should be doing this better. And then you realize I'm the person that needs to be doing that.
Yeah, right. Can't wait around for someone else. Right. Exactly. And you're with Florida Conservation Voters now. Is that correct?
Yes, I work on water and land policy and have been fortunate to spend the past couple years working closely with conservation allies around the state. And most importantly, thousands of Floridians who are engaged in these issues, and really trying to pull out what the bills that our legislators are proposing, what they actually mean for the health of our environment and our people and our economy. And so, as someone who advocates for water quality and conservation, am able to make recommendations to lawmakers about how to make bills better, or which bills just really are not going to be good for our state.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, so it's a long list, obviously, of water quality issues here in Florida. But what do you see as the most pressing issues, the most pressing clean water issues in your district, and then statewide?
Yeah. So the district I'm running for is District 60, and it encompasses portions of St. Petersburg and Pinellas Park, and a lot of the waterfront neighborhoods that are along Tampa Bay. So people who came to this area or stay in this area because they love the water. We have so many boaters and paddlers and people who just love to walk along Tampa Bay and our waterfront park community and see the manatees and the dolphins. So people here are very connected to water. One of the biggest challenges we have here is maintaining the progress that we've made in cleaning up Tampa Bay. The red tide episode and the spill at Piney Point just over a year ago was a significant blow to the progress that we had made. There was about 215 million gallons of highly polluted, essentially liquid fertilizer, that was dumped into lower Tampa Bay. And the amount of that, about 200 tons of nitrogen, which is our primary pollutant here in Tampa Bay, there was as much nitrogen dumped into the bay over a 10-day time period as that part of the bay usually receives in an entire year. So it was just a shock to the system in the worst possible way. It helped to exacerbate this red tide that was already present out at the Gulf of Mexico and resulted in literally tens of thousands of pounds of dead fish, wildlife, dolphins, manatees. People had their canals clogged with dead fish and manatees. It certainly affected our local businesses, public health here. People who have asthma and respiratory illnesses could not be safely outside for many months as a result of that. And so we still haven't seen what the long-term implications of that are to Tampa Bay, but we know how hard we had to fight to reduce every pound of nitrogen that goes into Tampa Bay. So we're going to have to work even harder to make up for that. A lot of the gains that we had in water quality early on were because we upgraded our wastewater treatment plants. And those were big investments in the billions of dollars that this local community, this Tampa Bay region, had to invest. But we have seen the positive results as a result of that. We still have some of the most advanced wastewater treatment in the entire state. And so now what we're having to deal with is these smaller sources of pollution, whether it's fertilizer runoff from your yard or stormwater runoff, pollution from air pollution, from cars, from vehicles, from power plants. And so it's really about doing as much as we can individually and collectively, but there's no one or two big sources that we can point at. It's really all of us doing whatever we can do now.
Yeah, it's interesting. As expensive as it obviously would have been to go after the big sewage treatment plants, it kind of represents in a way the lower hanging fruit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes tougher. And once it becomes tougher, that's when, it becomes a lot of times, you need more political will to sort of make the changes that need to be made, to make the strides that need to be made, that sort of thing. Because it's easy, I guess, to sort of grind to a bit of a halt or, not see the sustained gains that everyone's looking to see. So what about statewide? I mean, obviously red tide, we've been reading a lot now in the wake of the hurricane, that there's a lot of concern that and it's not a guaranteed thing, but it's possible that could feed or trigger a new red tide event. Of course, over here on the East Coast, blue-green algae has been, a huge issue. It keeps coming back. Do you see like harmful algal blooms as being like, one of the biggest issues facing the state? What other issues? The pollution of the springs. I mean, like I said, there are so many of these issues. It's almost hard to rank them in terms of severity.
Yeah.
That sort of
Well,
thing.
harmful algal blooms really are a symptom of the underlying problem, which is too much pollution in our water. And we are seeing, in our saltwater systems, we're generally seeing the red tide. In our freshwater systems, seeing the production of the blue-green algae, but then that gets into our estuaries, you over on the East Coast or the Caloosahatchee area. We actually had it documented in the Hillsborough River this summer, and that's the primary drinking water source for the city of Tampa. So that is very concerning. I think we will see increased algae as a result of the hurricane. We know that many of the communities were still on septic systems. And so those septic systems being inundated during the hurricane, that human waste is going right out into the Gulf of Mexico. There were failures of the lift stations, which essentially are bringing that wastewater to the treatment plants. And there really is a statewide need for us to upgrade our infrastructure, whether that's moving from septic to sewer. We've got about 2.7 million septic systems, known septic systems in the state. And it's not just in rural communities. Places in Miami-Dade County, for example, have waterfront communities that are still on septic. So that's a significant investment that we have to make. But also making sure that our wastewater treatment plants, if you're in a community where you are not at advanced wastewater treatment, how can we make upgrades to those treatment plants, but also maintaining the pipes that take the water from your homes or your businesses to these centralized treatment areas. Those are called lateral lines. And we know that some of those were constructed 50, 100 years ago. Some of them were actually made out of essentially cardboard or clay material. So when tree roots get in there, they literally are burrowing into these pipes. And so you'll have a mixture of this wastewater and rainwater, which can overload the systems. And sometimes that can lead to some of those unwanted wastewater spills or discharges that happen. But these are, you're not seeing this on an everyday basis because it's buried underneath our properties. But there is a need to, identify places where we need to upgrade that infrastructure. So as a state, it can seem very scary and overwhelming at how we fix this problem. But I think we need to assess where some of our biggest pollution hotspots are, where we have places where we know we can make upgrades and start to focus on some of those priority locations first, knowing that we have finite resources, but that we can't ignore the problems and that our water quality is so connected with our health and our economy.
Right. It's like the old line about how to eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? I mean, that's all you sort of can't do in a lot of these cases. But, it is a daunting challenge, as you know, and I know just working in this space. The discussion this morning about PFAS, forever chemicals, sort of the rising awareness of the threat that those pose. And that's a whole different ballgame,
Yeah.
But so there's plenty of challenges out there to be tackled if in fact you're successful in this run. But let's talk a little bit about, as I said sort of at the outset here, of let's just say Tallahassee, the legislature is not full of environmentally concerned or conscious individuals, perhaps such as yourself. So, if you win this race, if you are elected, how are you going to make a difference in an environment where, special interests play such a significant role? I mean, we spend a lot of time tracking the sugar industry, for my organization, but obviously there are other similar, special interests that spend a lot of money and they get results up in Tallahassee. And if you want to try to, make a difference, sometimes you got to go up against them. How are you going to do that?
Well, I'll start by saying when I win, this election.
All right.
No, I fully intend to be in Tallahassee and help represent, the health of our community and our water. And I think we have some really strong examples from the past couple years of when we have taken on special interest and won. I'll give you a few examples. The MCORS was a
Right.
massive toll road
Good example.
program that was proposed by the then Senator Galvano, Senate President Galvano. It would have potentially built 330 new miles of toll roads, impacting around 50,000 acres of natural and agricultural areas. And estimates were that it would cost taxpayers around $25 billion. That was a bill that came late in the session. It only went through one committee stop on the House side. And so it really represented bad government and something that was not vetted by the people or even wanted by the people. But organizations like Friends of the Everglades, like Florida Conservation Voters, there was a coalition of more than 100 organizations and businesses that recognized that this is not what we wanted for our state. We had people from rural communities, from agriculture that attended meetings and spoke about why this was not right for our state. And we were successful in repealing that bill. And most recently, kind of a smaller component of that, trying to extend the Northern Turnpike from the Wildwood area potentially up into Georgia. DOT has stalled that project because of the local communities that said, we don't want this. And their local county commissions or city councils passed resolutions against it, and we're able to see at least a pause for now on that. We know that the bad ideas resurface. This is Halloween time, so we see the Night of the Living Dead or the zombies come back. So we may have to fight that fight again, but that was a significant win for our water and for our environment.
Mm-hmm. How do you build more of a consensus for that? You know what I mean? For, legislation, an overall philosophy that places greater value on, because there's always a trade-off in some respects, right? The people who advocated for MCORS talked in terms of economic expansion, talked in terms of jobs,
Mm-hmm.
all of which may have occurred had that proposal gone through as initially sort of proposed. How do you build more of a consensus for conservation,
Mm-hmm.
in Tallahassee? Is it a matter of the public getting involved and speaking out? I mean, we were very involved in the whole fight over Senate Bill 2508 earlier this session, which contained some provisions that would have cemented in place some very bad water management rules at Lake Okeechobee at the behest of the sugar industry. And there was a really significant public outcry that ultimately Governor DeSantis vetoed that legislation after it sailed through
Mm-hmm.
both houses. How important, I guess, is the public paying attention, getting involved to building that consensus, to creating a consensus in Tallahassee for those?
The public is absolutely necessary in all of these steps, because the places where we saw success were when the public was involved, when people were coming up to Tallahassee to committee meetings and speaking out against bad bills or in support of good bills. People coming to their county commissions or their delegation meetings. That is when we see success. There was a bill last year that would have allowed for the destruction of seagrass and mitigating it in other areas. Seagrass is very hard to transplant and regrow because you have to have clean water.
Right.
Last year, we had 1,101 manatees that died around the state. Mm-hmm. And the majority of those starved to death because we've lost tens of thousands of acres of seagrass. We had editorials. We had newspapers write about how this was a bad bill. We had Republicans who were coming out against it, but they were getting pressure from their constituents, from their residents. Mm-hmm. So it is absolutely imperative that the public is tuned in and talking to their lawmakers about how they want clean water and holding those lawmakers accountable.
Right, right. And I think that that's a great example of the manatee deaths is something that it captured the public imagination. And in that, the conservation community was able to draw a bright red line between that issue and that bill, the seagrass mitigation bill, mitigation banking bill, because as you said, it's almost impossible to replant seagrass or to transplant seagrass in the manner in which that bill assumed you could. Ultimately, the concern was that bill would have ultimately led to the demise of additional seagrasses. And we could not let that happen because, for other reasons as well, but because of the impact on the manatee population, And I think you're right. I think once, we say we're officially a nonpartisan organization, VoteWater is, and my line is that clean water is not and must not be a partisan issue. And you saw with that bill, the seagrass mitigation banking bill, I believe it was Randy Fine, Brevard County, spoke out against it, and raised some significant concerns. But that's his district, right? Mm-hmm. Where all these manatees were dying. That was the epicenter of the manatee deaths, and people of all political stripes were really upset about that. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, you hate to have it be in response to some sort of crisis, right? That people become, maybe more educated on these topics and become more involved. Definitely becoming more educated, more involved. Speaking out helps build that constituency, I guess. So well, very good. Look, Lindsay, it's great to have you. How's the campaign going, by the way?
Things are great. We have 20 days left on the campaign trail, and we're excited for victory. And I'm excited to dig into the policy and do the work. Yeah. I love being out in the district and meeting people, talking to them, particularly out crosswalking, as we call our canvassing. So I love that. I love hearing about what people are concerned about, things that they're excited about. But I want to get up and take all those ideas, what I've been hearing for people for nearly a year and a half on this campaign trail, and start to work on proactive policies that are going to move our state forward, making sure that we have clean water and healthy communities and a strong economy. So I am ready to work.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thanks for taking some time out for us. We appreciate it. And thanks for all of you who watched. This is going to live on our Facebook channel. So if you missed it the first time around, come catch it the second time around as well. Thanks for tuning in. We hope to schedule a few more of these one-on-ones with some of our other endorsed candidates. So stay tuned to our social media feeds. And again, check out VoteWater's voter guides for the 2022 general election at votewater.org/voter-guides. Thank you, Lindsay. I'm Gil Smart. And until next time, vote water.
Thank you, friends.